All right, welcome to the Krueger Show on a Saturday morning. Coach in the house.
What up?
9:22 on the West Coast, 22 minutes after noon on the East Coast. We're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out in Emeryville and Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. We're also brought to you by Marin Auto Glass. MarinAutoGlass.com. Check them out. Underdog Fantasy. If you're, check that link in the description. Use the promo code Krug, and they will match you up to your first $100. And Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles, 205 Cypress Avenue in Pacific Grove. Call Anthony Catania, 831-521-5264. Well, we've been talking about it. Are the 49ers going to get themselves a defensive coordinator or not? And, Coach, they have found their defensive coordinator. As I just adjust my mic here. There we go. Anyway, what do you think? Nick Sorensen is the hire. He was the passing game coordinator from a year ago. He's only been with the Niner organization for 2 years. And then Brandon Staley has been hired to replace Anthony Lynn as assistant head coach. That's the news of the day. I've already by the way, if people tuning in going, what's going on the show today? I was trying to tape a video before the show but I wanted to invite Coach because sometimes it takes Coach a minute to get his mic set up and everything. So I went to invite the coach and I forgot to pop out of the room and thought I was taping a video, found out I was doing almost a 7-minute live stream and then ending it. So anyway, we had to recreate the live stream. So for those of you who jumped in, had to jump out, that's what's going on. Not losing my mind, not doing 6-minute shows. Just trying to tape a video before the show and effed it up. With that being said, Coach, good morning. And what did you think of the new hire?
It's a lot to unpack when you want to go with process. First of all, good morning.
Good morning.
All right. Good morning to the crew. Good morning to my peoples. Good morning to your peoples. You know what I'm saying?
Both channels in effect
both
today.
People, you know what I'm saying? What's up to the Larry side? What's up to the Bang Bang side? The way I feel about it is you can go two sides on this. You can go half glass empty or you can go half glass full, right? So let's go half glass empty, right? Let's eat the dessert first. So half glass empty is they swung and they missed on multiple candidates, and the process drew out so long that they had to go with their contingency prize, which is their consolation prize, if you will, which is a guy who was a special teams coordinator under quite possibly one of the worst NFL head coaches of all time in Urban Meyer, right? Spent a stint over in Seattle and was the defensive pass game and the nickel coordinator and the nickel coach for our team. And my thing is that if you really saw Nick Sorensen as a shining star, then you elevate him last year instead of bringing in Wilks, right? Specifically, Nick Sorensen is a DB's coach, right? Which is exactly what we brought Wilks in for. And Wilks is a DB coach coming from outside of our enclaves, coming outside of our defense, right? Nick Sorensen earned his chops in Seattle, which is carbon copy of what we do on defense. So there's confusion there. Then you can also say, well, Brandon Staley is the plausible deniability hire, right? Where it's like, well, Wilks has enough cachet where you can beat him up throughout the season and say, Wilks knows what he did. He knows he messed up, and the guys can beat up on Wilks because quite frankly, he can take it. He's been around, but it's not really going to stick with Sorensen as the DC, and there may be some bumps in the road down the middle of the season, and Kyle's trying to throw his rookie DC under the bus. Like, that's not going to play. So you could almost look at it as if like, hey, kind of, I can beat up on Sorensen. I mean, I could beat up on
Staley.
and bring him in. And that could be somebody where I can get plausible deniability, where it's like, hey, he's the whipping post. He already got fired. He's disgraced, and me getting rid of him and elevating somebody who I really want to protect, like Bullocks. I really do believe that Kyle likes Coach Bullocks, and he kind of wants to keep him out of the line of fire of what it takes being the DC and the assistant head coach of a high-profile team, because when we lose, we want blood. So that's half glass empty, right? Half glass full. Half glass full is the narrative that I have been talking about throughout the offseason, which is pivoting, right? We need to find a pivot. We have to figure out how we can repurpose, re-optimize what we already have in-house while getting better as a team, because our mode of how we win, our SOP, is spread out throughout the league. It's evangelized. Everybody does it now. So now we've got to be the one to be the trend breakers, right? So you could say half glass full. One of the biggest things that we've been saying is, Kyle, get a coordinator. Kyle, you don't have to be the head coach and the OC. Kyle, why don't you take more hands off? Why don't you take more hands off of the process? Well, I did a little digging, and we know this is the first defensive assistant head coach that Kyle has had since he's been here. The first couple of years that we were here, it was John Embry from 2017 to 2021. And then Lynn took over for the last 2 years. So these have all been offensive guys that had been the assistant head coach of the team throughout this time. You could look at this and say, Kyle is finally seeing throughout going through a season where he made it to the Super Bowl, but there were wide reports of Kyle putting his hands on the defense a lot more granularly this year, and specifically in the Super Bowl, where there were reports that Kyle actually did the defensive game plan for the Super Bowl this year. So you could look at this as Kyle is finally bending the knee in a sense of saying, all right, look, one of the biggest things that happened with Wilks is I almost lost my locker room because my leaders and my guys on the defensive side of the ball, they weren't feeling this guy. They didn't understand his mode of going through the defense. They didn't like his schematics. They didn't like his coaching. Cool. So let me give them somebody who they know, who they've been in the trenches with, and who they respect. That's Nick Sorensen. All right. Then at the same time, Kyle's probably saying, all right, well, I don't want to put Nick in a situation where he's kind of flying blind, right? There's going to be a lot of firsts for him. And I know through a whole season that I just went through that you can't pour from an empty cup. Energy has to come from somewhere. And I can probably sense that there probably was some fatigue throughout the year with our team. And I'm telling you, it all flows downhill. You get a tired team, that's tired coaching. All right. And Kyle's probably looking at Brendan Staley is saying, like, look, you had 1 year as a DC and you were lights out. You've kind of been a wonderkid in your career. You've elevated and been pushed through and kind of got thrusted into a head coaching situation that you really couldn't turn down. Now is an opportunity for you to sit back, kind of get back into what you used to do, right? He's already been a DC. Brandon Staley's been a DC for a number of years, albeit on the college level, but he has that mode. And also one thing about Brandon Staley that I will say is that in certain ways, I do look at him as kind of like the defensive Kyle Shanahan, where he gets in his way a little too much because he has too much on his plate. Maybe these are two kindred spirits coming together, taking the load off of each other, and then together creating a good relationship where Brandon Staley doesn't have to worry about necessarily worrying about an offense, pushing through game management, and he can be his creative self with being able to help Nick Sorensen and be eyes on the field in the booth, possibly during game days. And then Kyle, he finally can give the entire defense over to a coaching staff that he trusts. Not only that his players are okay with the DC, but he also has another guy who can look over the defense, and he can get back to the offense and put more hands on that side of the ball. So that's half glass full. So you can look at it a number of ways, right? So that's kind of
I love your last comment. I really do. I think that is super interesting. And I think you're right. I think Sorensen could be the defensive version of Shanahan offensively, in that talented, smart, respected, but there are issues. And maybe together they can get it done. I want to go through a couple here. A couple thoughts on it. Dale says, bro, they were always going internal. Dale, I know this. I put this up there not to bang on you, but because I've seen this comment or this sentiment out there in a lot of the chats. And I would say that's categorically false. Why? Because Steve Spagnuolo says they offered the job to him. And, it's come out in the last week that they offered the job to Belichick. So I think they aimed super high. I think how high, you can't go higher than Belichick and Spags as far as outside the organization. I really believe they offered both those guys the job. We'll never really know unless Shanahan talks on this, but there have been reports in the last 24 hours that he offered the job to Dianne Rossini from ESPN, or from the Athletic podcast, said that the Niners offered the job to Spags a couple days after the Super Bowl. And they were flirting with the idea of bringing him in as the DC. I mean, Spags himself was working on getting a new deal, and maybe that they were just trying to help him along there. But I think that was serious. And there was another rumor that came out this week that they offered the job to Belichick, and that Kyle reached out to Belichick, and that Belichick said, hey, I'm going to do TV for a year. So I don't, even though Dale says, bro, they were always going internal, I think they were always going internal unless they could get a superstar name. So I can't agree with they were always going internal idea. So that's one. Now we have this one from Eric Dowling, who says, I'm done with the 49ers. Eric, I got to say, I think that's a little over the top.
That's a little complete.
That might be, you might be putting a little bit too much into the DC hire, but I don't want to judge you or your fandom. Then we have this one from Jorge Reyes, who says Merritt would have kicked ass with the Niners 5 Super Bowls. We watched in the Jesse Vish Big Show Thursday night the highlight of, and you jumped in on the chat, so you remember the dialogue.
Yep.
We played a clip of Merritt on a Kansas City show, talking with a roundtable and questioning Shanahan. So it's funny how these things work. When you watch the clip, Merritt comes across like, man, he hates Shanahan, and in like he's attacking Shanahan. When you watch the entirety of the entire sit down, it was like, dude, that was the guy. I mean, this guy's passionate. He's smart.
Turned down the Giants job.
He's got rings. He's been in major markets. He's been on multiple franchises. And I kind of wonder, after I read the Spags thing, if maybe Spags said, hey, look, I can't do the job because I'm going to re-sign in KC. But man, you got to interview Dave Merritt because Dave deserves the job. So I predicted on that stream that I thought they would go with Marquand Manuel because Kyle worked with him in Atlanta. He had been a defensive coordinator before. And I thought Manuel would have been their call. But after watching the entirety of that interview, I kind of think that Merritt would have been the right guy, just from the standpoint of he's an independent voice. He's a strong voice. He is, he's a man of faith. He's an accomplished linebacker coach. But then I was thinking why it doesn't fit is they don't want to get rid of their linebacker coach. They like Johnny Holland. They don't want to get rid of their D-line coach. They like Chris Kasarik. So that, once again, the Niners, everything I think in football is about structure. Like, was Harbaugh and Balky a good combo? Yeah, it was a good combo. Jim was a pretty good coach, and Balky was not the worst general manager, but it wasn't a good combo because they didn't fit together. They didn't have a trust. They didn't have any, they didn't have that core trust, and how things come together do matter as far as the coaches and how the structure is in place and what kind of trust you have. So I don't know that the Niners wanted to go outside. I think they wanted to stay internal from the standpoint of they didn't want to change their scheme. Then when Lynch went to the combine and said, hey, you know what? We don't want to make wholesale changes. I think I read that as we like our wide nine and we like here's the bottom line. You're replacing the coordinator, but you like the DB coach. You're replacing the coordinator, but you like the linebacker coach. You're replacing the coordinator, but you like the D-line coach. I mean, think about that for a second. That's a very unique situation. So I think first of all, we got to start our conversation with what did you think of the job that Steve Wilks did? Did you like what Steve Wilks did? And I don't have a problem with it other than
if you want to talk about in a vacuum for instances of the season, that's a whole conversation. But in its totality, I was pleased with the job that Coach Wilks did as a defensive coordinator from week 1 to the Super Bowl. Right now, if you want to talk about the standard of what we expect out of our defense on a consistent basis, he left much to be desired in a lot of different areas. Some of it was him resonating with the players, right? And that's something that we'll talk about later. I shouldn't even have said that first, but that's the biggest one. But also situational awareness, knowing when to call certain things, knowing when to bend the knee to the defense and use them in the best position that they can, right? It's almost as if Coach Wilks actually got assessed as being a real coach, where it wasn't what he was calling, but it was the results that he was getting or the results he was getting out of the players that we had on the field. And I feel like that's how we assess our defense, but we assess our offense differently. Whereas we assess our defense from a standpoint of we have the names, all right, then we should be getting the stops. We should not be getting scored on, period. That's the end of it. And whoever is running the defense at that time is culpable. So, and then also I'll just piggyback on what I started with, him not being galvanized with the players. Like, one thing that I did realize this season, especially with Wilks being there, and it was kind of hard to see because D'Amico and Robert Saleh were so entrenched into the fabric of our team culturally. But these guys, they say that they're pros. These guys really have to like who they playing for. It's evident, it's clear. And if they're not feeling this guy, if they don't think that, they can trust this guy and he's putting them in the best position, they won't play for him. I've been on teams where we didn't like the coach, but we still played for one another. Like effort wasn't an issue. Not tackling wasn't ever an issue. Not blocking was never an issue. We understood that the coach was a dick. And you know what I'm saying? And then I also played on teams where it was by design. He didn't care. It was like, as long as y'all all hate me collectively, I'm doing my job. Right. So what I didn't understand is just the overall performance of, all right, if you're not feeling him, then, you not being ready to play is not a coach issue. That's a player issue. If you already saying you're not feeling the guy. So for what it's worth, I didn't have a problem with the level of play of our defense, but overall he deserved to be fired because you can't coach a team that doesn't want to be coached. And he lost the locker room. And when you have your players, when you have your best players like Nick Bosa, right, and Fred Warner coming out saying we weren't prepared, these were the reasons why we lost. Like, he's got to go. He's got to go.
I feel for Steve because, look at what a hard job that is. I agree with you. I think, the Niners players had a relationship with Saleh. They had a relationship with D'Amico. Those guys were incredible personalities, very likable. younger guys that were closer in age to the players. And then you've got a new guy coming in, but not bringing his own scheme, taking their scheme, trying to coach their scheme. And he's an older guy. He's more accomplished. He's trying to show the room that he's a strong figure. But then, it's like, did he, as you said, did his message resonate with them? And then it's like, well, he's up in the booth. I think some of the linebackers felt there might have been a disconnect. Ultimately, though, coaches coach and players play. And I think the Niners' struggles this year have way more to do with the moves that they made player-wise than the coordinator switch. So I think Steve got kind of a bad deal, a raw deal. But then I look at Steve's football card, and he's coached for 25 years in like 22 different spots. So, does he cultivate relationships, or does he say, hey, this is how it's going down, and then the relationships kind of wither over time? I don't know. I mean, he's a proud guy. He's going to, I think he's a capable guy. I mean, they finished top 10 in total D, top 5 in points allowed. And he did it losing Ebukam, Amenahue, Mosley, Ward, Azeez Al-Shaair. I mean, like 5 or 6 really good run defenders. They weren't very good against the run. I don't know that was Steve's fault. It was the same scheme and a lot of the same players, but then they lost 5 good players against the run, and shocker, they weren't that good against the run. So I don't know that. I don't think it was necessarily his fault. So, one, they wanted to go continuity. So maybe, and I don't know we've been privy to do interviews with some of the assistant coaches. I just never have had a chance. I've always chosen other coaches instead of Coach Sorensen. So I've never, I'm listening to Chris. I'm going to talk to Johnny. I've talked to Bullocks. So it's like, I don't really have any dialogue with Sorensen to give you any kind of, impression. And then they keep them kind of away from the media most of the year. So I couldn't tell you if Sorensen, can't speak English, or if he's the greatest communicator of all time. And I just don't know. I just don't know. I wish I knew more about that. As far as Brandon Staley's interesting in that he went to the Rams and they had like the greatest year of all time. I mean, number 1 in yards, number 1 in points. They won the Super Bowl. So then he's like the hottest coach in America, and the Chargers hire him. He goes 9-8 the first year. They go 10-7 in the second year. They make the playoffs. They lose to Jacksonville in the AFC wildcard game, but they finish second in the AFC West. This year, they get off to a 5-9 start, and they lose 63-21 to the Raiders on Thursday Night Football, and he gets fired in the middle of December. And then Pierce steps in, and the team starts playing well. So I don't know what to make. Staley, has been through a lot, though. I mean, this is a guy who beat cancer at the age of 24. I mean, that's amazing. I mean, this guy's, he's a married man with 3 kids. It's, he's been a head coach now. He's been the hot name in the coaching cycle. And now he's clearly down, and the value's down. And then I wonder, like, if as the assistant head coach, Staley went for it all the time on 4th down. Shanahan is way more conservative. Are we going to see the Niners now going for it more on 4th down? That part I wonder about. The thing that I like about Staley is that, you know what? If you're going to commandeer this division, you better beat the Rams. And he knows Sean McVay well. So, and he knows the Rams well. So maybe that's an advantage. He's also worked with Vic Fangio. He's worked with, Dan Quinn, some pretty good defensive coaches in his own right. So I don't know. I mean, it's odd because you're hiring a guy who has real credentials, but you're not making him the DC. You're not running his defense. You're staying with your own defense, and you're just having him there as a consultant. I really don't know how it's going to go. I would have loved to have seen Merritt just from the accountability standpoint. I think it would have made everybody uncomfortable, which maybe is a good thing, but I will say this: Brandon Staley has coached at some very good coaching spots. Northern Illinois is a very good coaching spot. John Carroll University is a very good coaching spot. James Madison is a very good coaching spot.
Love JMU.
The Rams is a very good coaching spot. So, we'll see. We'll see. Ultimately, we've talked a lot about this. But I think what matters way more than this are what defensive players do they add to this mix? Because to me, I'm a players guy. I'm a personnel guy. I really believe it's the players. I don't think Hargrave was that great against the run, and I didn't like the backup defensive lineman, and then I didn't like losing Aziz or Jimmy Ward. I thought they were noticeably not as good this year defensively, and I think this is a huge, huge offseason. We're talking tons about the right tackle spot, and there's no doubt they need to improve their offensive line. But the Niners are kind of a finished product offensively. But defensively, you've got almost all of your backup D linemen you need to replace, and then you have to add a linebacker or two. You need a little bit more help in the secondary. You need those young DBs to develop. To me, their defense and the personnel and what they do in the free agent market and in the draft are way more important than this hire.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what everything kind of matters right now because it's the off season. So every decision that you make right now, is going to bear out. You need to look at that and forecast out, where these decisions are going to lie. One thing that I will say about Brandon Staley is that there's issues with him blowing games, right? Most notably the Jaguars game recently. That was a huge game that they let go. Another big thing is that for all of the processing errors that he has as a coach, and rightfully so, when he was with the Chargers, they had tons of injuries, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Joey Bosa was always hurt. J.C. Jackson was always hurt when he was there. One thing that you also have to look at is he's also known for limiting explosive plays, right? That's kind of like his calling card on defense, being able to stifle defenses on explosive plays. And one thing that I will say that's going to be that piggybacks on him always going forward on fourth down is that he's a strong supporter of analytics. Now, where that sets on how we're going to see the Niners, this version of our Niners in 2024, I don't know. But like I said, I'm choosing to go half glass full on this, right? Kyle has got a guy who we could argue is just as talented on defense as he is on offense, schematically. And at times, both of them have issues with processing their genius during games because I feel like they have a little bit too much responsibility. If they're approaching this the right way, this could be a really good relationship between the both of them where they could flow, the workflow could be better, and they could also bounce off of each other. And one of the biggest things is that I'm looking to see if Kyle is going to build trust with somebody. That's another thing that I feel like this also is emblematic of, is that when we get coaches in the building, we are always asking who is the guy that Kyle respects? Who's the voice that can get to Kyle and say, I think we should go for it here, or I think this is the defense that should be ran right now, or these are the things that I did when I was going through my terms. Like, I understand that Anthony Lynn was also a head coach, and he probably served in that role admirably, but I just feel like we're going to see a little bit more of, I feel like we're ran by our defense, right? We're a defensive team, but like the minutia of how we go about things is we're offensively driven, right? Where we forget about doing things in the case of trying to move the ball down the field or score. And I feel like having Brandon Staley could be a possibility where we start understanding, like, maybe Brandon Staley is the guy that's going to start speaking up and protecting the defense when he's looking at Kyle and he's like, look, bro, you've gone 9 plays in a row and you've not ran the ball. You're throwing my guys back out on the defense. And right about now, just out of fatigue is concerned. This is one thing that I feel like the fans don't understand as well. Fatigue can cut off a huge part of your playbook, especially on defense, because the defense doesn't get 3 downs. All right. The offense gets 3 downs. On defense, you got to kill what you eat. You got to get them off the field. So just by fatigue alone, you could really pigeonhole a defense by throwing them back onto the field, and they shrink in performance as their fatigue goes down. I feel like having a guy like Brandon Staley in the building is going to be able to help with that. Now, as far as like our main issues are concerned, I feel like those are infrastructure pieces that we needed, and I'm happy. We actually got more brains in the building, and they're categorized in the right job skill set so we can go after the big issue, which is player development, which is free agent, and wondering what we're going to do with our damn near $100 million receiver room that we possibly could have, which is going into the draft and figuring out how we're going to find value with what's going to be the cream of the crop picks that we get this year. Are we falling in love with the right tackle that we actually kick up in the draft and go get an Amarius Mims? Or do we stand pat at 31 and go get the best center in the draft? So right now, I feel like this is a good, solid piece. There's no games being played. There's really no information being doled out except what we hear from the organization. So I'm choosing to be positive about this until I get new information.
Which I think is that's a good approach for sure. Let's hit some of the supers because a lot of them are on this topic, and then we will get back into a different topic. We'll hit some other topics today as well because, people, to me, the coaching topic's fine, but the player topic is to me the juicier stuff. Yaz Williams says Staley is not a culture fit. He says it loudly. Okay. 49er _ throwback. What are your concerns for Nick Sorensen and Staley?
Experience.
Yeah, I mean, my concerns, I can't really say that I've got concerns about Sorensen because I don't know him. And I don't think there's enough track record there. I guess that would be my concern, that I don't know him and that there's not enough track record there. As far as Staley, did his team quit on him? Because they sure look better the next couple weeks under Antonio Pierce. So that's kind of a concern, but they also ran out the GM and, I don't know. I don't know what to say. I mean, I think Staley's probably a bright guy.
Antonio Pierce was the head coach of the Raiders, Larry.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I should say the Raiders under Pierce destroyed Staley's team.
Yeah.
But when Staley left, didn't the Chargers kind of have an uptick as well?
Of course.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. I was thinking of that Raider game with 63-21. But
Aiden O'Connell, 63 points.
Yeah.
Man.
I guess my concern with Staley, my concern with Staley is just that he went for it so much on 4th down, and I don't know that his feel like Shanahan. If you said to me, what's Shanahan's greatest attribute? I would say it's his play calling, designing, and sequencing. If you said what's his worst attribute, I would say it's his in-game decision-making and game management and feel. If you said to me, Staley, what's his strength? I would say the same. Yeah, it's like, and his weakness is in-game feel. And so it's like, I get 2 guys who don't really have great feel in-game, in my opinion, on the same staff. But
I can see the Spider-Man memes now of Kyle Shanahan, Brandon Staley, and Nick Sorensen during the loss, pointing at each other. like who's
Yeah, I mean, my other concern is like, are the 49ers going to ever play complementary football? I just feel like they did that a few times, under Saleh and under D'Amico in the early days of Shanahan with the Niners. I felt like the Niners did not play complementary football. And what I mean by that is sometimes when your defense is thin, you got to run the ball, dominate the time of possession, and protect your defense. And I thought there were opportunities to do that. And Shanahan seemed like he always wanted the explosive play, always kind of was still in this pass-happy mode, didn't protect his defense. Or if he did it at weird times, like in the overtime against the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. But I mean, to me, I want to. If your defense is going to have some flaws, if you got an awesome defense, you don't need to protect it. But if your defense has some flaws, you do need to protect it. Or if you're going up against a team that has offensive firepower, sometimes you need to play complementary football. I didn't see a lot of that this year.
No, I mean, I didn't see a lot of that this year either. But, also, I do not like doing this, but I'm going to be fair. Giving Kyle some credit, or not even giving Kyle credit, but just, understanding is that this is Kyle, we talk about Brock's first time being here, and everything is so new for Brock. This is Kyle's first full time having Brock out there and being able to just put out an entire body of work and see what he has in the quarterback, and being able to push and see what, what's far north, what's far right, like where are Brock's boundaries. So there could be it's hard for me to even talk nicely about Kyle, but this could be a situation where Kyle is learning how to use Brock. Kyle is trying to figure out how far to push Brock and understand, like, all right, look, when we go 5 wide, these are the things that we can use with them. When we starting to go up tempo and we're getting into our fast stuff, or we're getting into our now packages, like, these are the things that we can use with the Brock. But for the most part, we do have to have a base level speed or cadence, if you will, about how we move our offense that is complementary to our defense as well. I do agree with you. There were times where a lot of our 3 and outs weren't because the plays weren't working. It's simply because some of those plays just shouldn't have been called in the moment. Like, where all of us are feeling like, all right, I understand, like, we need to be able to, like, out scheme these guys, but we are better than them. Right? Like, I felt like that against the Lions. I felt that way against the Packers, where those teams, we were pound for pound better than those teams. But offensively, we kind of get a little too cool for school. And what happens is that we're leaning on a defense where they can only be best in the world, but for so many drives. And then they're going to start leaking. That's no testament. That's no, downside on them, but that is showing, like, some of the things that, you should be paying attention to. Also, speaking of complimentary, throughout the whole season, we have been replenishing that D line, because we basically gave all of our depth away for, like, a high price guy in Javon Hargraves, which I believe personally he's underplaying his contract. I don't think he's living up to his contract personally.
I agree. I think if you could undo that move, I would. I looking at the way the team looked this year compared to their defense last year, I liked it when they were deeper.
I would take the depth over that one piece in a heartbeat. If you told me that we would have found a way to keep, now I understand that Charles Omenihu blew his knee out. I understand that, but before all of that, if you would have told me that we could have kept at least Samson Ebukam, Charles Omenihu, and maybe Jordan Willis over Javon Hargraves, I would have took that depth all day over having him in there.
And not only that, I mean, Jimmy Ward, Azeez Al-Shaair, you probably could have retained a lot of those guys.
Yeah. And then we are where we have an opportunity to actually go get Azeez. I would really not be mad. Like, I get, we need to get younger. I understand that. But I feel like righting that wrong is a big deal. Like, we should get Azeez back in the building. I really would do it.
We're going to hit on that in a minute. Where are you with Shanahan? Are you in the camp? Well, are you in the camp? I mean, I haven't talked to Grant in the last couple weeks. Mm-hmm. We haven't streamed in a couple weeks, but last I heard, him and his dad were firing Shanahan. Are you in that? Are you in the camp that wants to fire Shanahan?
No, not in today's NFL's landscape. No. In today's landscape of the NFL, teams are more profitable. It's profitable. You got to be profitable to win. And I understand that you don't cut off your nose to spite your face, in a sense that the only way a real discussion about Kyle being fired would be viable is if we started losing. because this is about money, right? It's the money first, it's the entertainment second, and then it's the sport last. That's pro sports, right? So for us, Kyle, he rises enough tides on the sports element of all of this for him to be like above beyond reproach. Like he's up like above the fray. But if we started losing and like not going to the playoffs, then I feel like that's when a real discussion needs to be had. But as far as where we stand as a franchise, I feel like talking about Kyle's deficiencies and his vulnerabilities are just kind of like a husband arguing about his wife. It's kind of like it's cheaper to keep her. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I understand all of the things that are wrong with him. But, you know, at this stage of the game, the only viable way of getting rid of Kyle and it making sense in history is if we have an owner who that's his way of business, which we don't, or two, Kyle is cooking the books and he's losing so much that like the fan base and everything is starting to fall off. And then they're like, all right, we got to make a move. Right. But I don't think that they look at our team. I don't think the ownership looks at the team the way the fans look at the team from like a standard standpoint of like, we need to win a Super Bowl. A Super Bowl will be nice, but Larry, you and I know that 2 home playoff games that's like going to the Super Bowl money-wise for these guys. So really, that's really it is. Kyle's attached to the money. As long as we go into the playoffs, Kyle's not going anywhere. That's just the logic take.
He's 64-51 career. He as a head coach, 6-10 in 2017, 4-12 in 2018. Then they go to the Super Bowl in 2019. They go 13-3. They fell back the next year and went 6-10. But since then, 10-7 in 2021, lost to the Rams in the NFC title game. 13-4 in 2022, lose to the Eagles in the NFC title game. 12-5 in 2023, first place in the NFC West, but lose to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. I mean, they got to get over, but I mean, what we're looking at is a guy who is 35-16 over the last 3 years with 2 trips to the conference title game and 1 trip to the Super Bowl. So I can't sign off on the he should go, but at the same time, it's not like I think he's the perfect head coach and is not above criticism or is above criticism. I think that, you know, critiquing him is clearly fair. And he's clearly has some strengths, but he clearly has some weaknesses. And, you know, I understand the conversation. I just can't ever get to this point of, get rid of him, because I'm thinking to myself,
so let me ask you this then.
I mean, who would I replace him with?
There's always a guy. There's always a guy. Before there was Kyle Shanahan, there was a guy. There was a guy, right? And you got to look at what Kyle has done in the NFL. It's not as if Kyle was just completely like blowing the league away before we hired him as a head coach. Those aren't facts, okay? Kyle comes from a ready-made legacy that is deeply embedded into the lexicon of the NFL. And we are benefactors of that as an organization. So we don't have as much problems with trading guys and meandering throughout the league because we have a guy like John Lynch, who's like, football's clicked up. You know this. Football is very, very cliquish. So if you're an insider, if you're a guy that's well-liked within the fabric of the NFL, then it's easier for you to move around. We didn't have that guy with a Chip Kelly. He was on the outside looking in. His coaching staff, the people that he knows, all of the front office people that he may have brought in, tried to at least. These are guys that are not like, charter members of the NFL. So when you don't get that trade, when you don't get that phone call picked up, when you're the last person to figure out how things are moving in the NFL, it's really emblematic of the type of coach you have, right? Kyle kind of puts our organization in the in crowd, right? So we get to kind of get the VIP treatment of the NFL experience because his father has been here for years. We're entrenched in the story of the NFL, and being able to operate as an organization with the name Shanahan on your team kind of greases the wheels of progress. So I get that part. But as far as like pound for pound winning, pound for pound chops, Kyle was mediocre before he got here. He had maybe three.
He wasn't anything, right? Because he wasn't a head coach.
Yeah, no, as far as an offensive coordinator.
Yeah. I mean, they were.
Yeah, he had.
I don't know.
Maybe three winning seasons. The numbers are there. He had maybe 3 to 4 winning seasons.
But I can also say the numbers are there.
Yeah,
the numbers are there as far as his Atlanta team was the most prolific first down offense in the history of the NFL.
That was 1 year.
They averaged eight something a carry, 8 something a play. But
I mean, Brock Purdy had to be better longer than that for us to start thinking he was the man. Like, Brock Purdy has been more efficient than that. Like, he had 1 year. The year before, even when he was in Atlanta, the year when they went 500, he had benched Roddy White, who was like Mr. Atlanta at that time, which we know, another beef with a wide receiver. And there was an active petition to get him fired, to get him out of there. They had won like 6 games in a row when they first went there, maybe 7. And then they had lost like 7 games in a row. And they had the easiest schedule in the NFL at the time. I think that was 2015. So what I'm saying is like, there's a reason why guys get hired and there's a reason why guys get fired. Kyle blowing Super Bowls is never going to get him fired. Never. Okay. Kyle losing the organization money is what's going to get him fired. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and there's so much money in the game. You know, if we're waiting for the 49ers to be hurting for money before they're going to fire Shanahan, then he's never going to get fired because with the gambling money creeping in, the international money creeping in, the marketing that the league is minting money and the money's going up. So if we're waiting on the Niners to be losing money, they're gonna lose games and have a losing season before they have a financially losing season, unless something totally unforeseen happens and they get terrible pub or something like that. I mean, there's just so much money in the NFL right now. I think Shanahan, if you look at him objectively, you could say he's a talented offensive coach who hasn't fully grasped how to win. You know, how to win consistently. I know people would look at that and go, what? But I just don't think that. I think that he's a talented guy. I think he's a great play caller. I think he understands offensive football. Like, I think he's a better offensive coach than Jim Harbaugh. But I think Jim Harbaugh has a much better idea of how to win. Where I think Shanahan is his scheme. Like, Shanahan could coach circles around Harbaugh as far as play design, play execution, everything. But like, if I said to you, who's more likely to win a Super Bowl in the next 5 years, Harbaugh or Shanahan, who would you take?
Harbaugh.
I think I would too.
Yeah. Harbaugh's got a quarterback. Watch out. Coach Harbaugh's got a quarterback. Like, you got to watch out now.
He also has a franchise, though, that, is kind of has no history of success. But they
need a culture guy. It's a blank canvas for him. I'm telling you.
I saw
it's wide open.
Joey Bosa did, and he said, hey, man, I did an interview with the guy for an hour, and it's like, I'm convinced that, his teams are going to play hard. They're going to be fast. They're going to be physical, that he's all about winning, that he sets the right tone, that he has great staff around him. Harbaugh does a lot of really, really good things. He himself hasn't climbed to the top of the mountain, and we'll see if he can do it.
Yeah.
But like, Kyle, I think, is a better offensive coach, but I think Harbaugh has got a much more, I think he can get great coaches around him. And I think it's all about the personnel, really. I don't know if Jim can do the personnel himself, and we'll find out if this guy Ortiz can do the personnel. But I think Shanahan's the better coach, but I think Harbaugh's more likely to win a Super Bowl. And I think Harbaugh today is further away from a Super Bowl. When you look at the AFC, when you look at all the work that needs to be done on their roster, the culture that needs to be established there, the Niners are way ahead of the Chargers, I think, in a lot of ways. But I think Harbaugh understands how to close that gap, and I think he'll be so driven that I think he'll find a way to get it done. I don't know if they're going to win the Super Bowl, but they're going to contend right away. for a Super Bowl, and he's going to be a big part of that turnaround. Let's hit a couple more of these supers. We got this one from Richie. Looks like Kyle Shanahan wanted to hire Staley, but Bosa said no. So they hired Sorensen to make Bosa happy. When Sorensen struggles, in comes Staley. This is Kyle Shanahan's last chance to win a Super Bowl with the players, with players buying in.
I think they built it in that way, though. I mean, even if that's true, it's built in. Like Staley, you can't bringing in Staley as the defensive coordinator is a demotion. He's the assistant head coach. Like that actually matters for money. You know what I mean? So yeah. So him being locked in as the assistant head coach in a way, it kind of like protects him because really Nick Sorensen could be the fall guy if they don't like the way the defense is moving because they can always get another DC.
Do you agree with his premise though that Bosa didn't want Staley and that's why Staley didn't get the job?
No, I don't think they.
How much say do Bosa and Warner? That's
a better question. That's a better question. How much say do they have? Quite honestly,
I don't know the answer.
My opinion is we haven't won anything, so you don't get any say. But I could see if we've won before, I would give say to guys because they've been to the mountaintop, they know. But we just fired a guy that you publicly like blamed. So it's like, no, I'm not asking you.
49er Talk Show says Kyle will be fired next year, and this downfall will affect the 49ers long term. Bill will be head coach next year after his TV gig. Watch Kyle. Kyle is a cancer. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And you see that. That's a guy with a Brock Purdy. That's a guy with a Brock Purdy avatar. I told you this before the season started. You know what we talked? Did I not say this? I said to you, Kyle met his match with Brock because the fans are not going to turn on Brock. It's going to be Kyle.
They would have if Brock didn't play well. But
that's what I'm saying.
I agree.
That's my next point, though.
Yeah,
that's my next point. My next point is that this is another silver lining that I feel as though is being missed, that Brock survived Kyle. What quarterback?
Brock took away the let's blame the quarterback from Kyle.
Yes, he survived it. Jimmy never survived that. Trey never survived that. CJ Beathard or Nick Mullins did not survive that. RG3 did not survive that. Neither did Johnny Manziel. None of them. And in a way, Matt Ryan didn't even really survive it, right? Like, I'm telling you, walking away from that game, Brock didn't have a perfect game by any stretch of the imagination. He missed throws and he put a little bit too much on. But at the same time, nobody walked away from that game saying that it was Brock. As a matter of fact, you can almost kind of feel like there was a little bit of professional, like a little bit of professional jabbing, when I feel like a lot of professionals went out of their way to highlight how good of a game Brock did. Even Coach Spags went and texted Brock and said, bro, you had a great game. He went on camera and talked about how good Brock did. Like, and you know what that is? That's all great for Brock. It's amazing. But you know what it also says is that was on your coach, kid. You had a good game. That wasn't on you. He did everything he was supposed to do. And that's something that I don't think Kyle is used to.
Brock didn't turn it over. Mahomes threw a pick. Brock didn't. Mm-hmm. You know, so it's like Brock played. I mean, nobody plays a perfect game, but Mahomes didn't play a perfect game, but Brock played well enough. So it can't be like it was Brock. More, I would say this. If you put out a poll question to every 49er fan, who would you blame more for losing Super Bowl 58? Brock Purdy or Kyle Shanahan? I am absolutely convinced that the fan base would vote that Kyle had more impact.
100%. Yeah. I would love, put that on your Twitter. Put that on your Twitter because that is the conversation that I feel like will put people squarely in the decision chamber of like, okay, Wilks is gone. We can't blame it on the defense. We can't blame it on the O-line. This isn't about. Have you ever noticed how we make so many versus situations on our team, but just to stay away from Kyle, it's always Spencer Burford versus John Feliciano, Coach Wilks versus the defense. You know what I'm saying? Brock Purdy versus the Chiefs. It's like, nah, bro. At the end of the day, quarterbacks and coaches win games. Okay. And if you had to ask, who would you blame more versus who lost this Super Bowl, I bet you there would be a resounding favor in Kyle. Like, Kyle, you can't blame this on Kyle. Brock did exactly what he was supposed to do.
Should it be a 2-person thing, or should we add a third person? Here's the question:
No,
who had
2? Because if you do the third, you're gonna let him off the hook. No.
Who had a bigger impact on the 49ers losing Super Bowl 58? Brock Purdy or Kyle Shanahan? There we go. I just put it out.
Yes.
I just put it out. We'll see what it says at the end of the show. Mm-hmm. I would say people are going to say Shanahan 2-1, maybe 3-1, maybe 4-1, maybe 4-1. and I agree with them. So I mean, it's,
and then hold on. And do you know what else?
And I want you to highlight this. And yet I'm sitting here, and you know it because we've talked about it. Mm-hmm. I'm a Shanahan believer. I don't think they should fire Shanahan. Maybe not. It's not like they should never. But right now, if you said, do you think you'd rather keep Shanahan or fire Shanahan? No doubt in my mind, I'd rather keep Shanahan. But there's also no doubt in my mind that he had a bigger impact on losing Super Bowl 58 than Brock Purdy.
You know, one thing that absolves Brock too is that after the game, how he talked about his play. He admitted where he messed up. Well, he was culpable. He was accountable. Yeah. But do you understand though? Do you understand how, like, just getting the little piece of the accountability out of the way first does wonders for you? It's like I don't understand why Kyle doesn't get that, where it's like, my man, you're about to be asked like maybe 10 minutes worth of questions. If you would just start the press conference with 45 seconds to a minute of, hey man, I didn't get it done. This is unacceptable. You know, everything that happened in this game falls squarely on me. I'm gutted for those guys back there, and I could have did better. You know, if you have any issues that happen with the team, place them squarely on me, because this is where it belongs. Boom. Answer as many questions as you need to do and get out of there. Completely kill the narrative of Kyle didn't do anything. He wasn't accountable. And you kill like a month's worth of content of people saying, like, did you see the way he was answering questions? Did you see how cantankerous he was? Did you see how abrupt he was? And it's like, that's why it's not the fact that he's not accountable. It's the fact that I don't think he wants to be. I think he understands that there's a moment of time where you could do that, and he's like, I'm not giving them that. Giving them that. Because you know why? He did it with Trey.
Right.
I had closure when he sat down after that preseason game and said, I feel like I let him down.
Yeah. That was
on me.
That was
gave me closure.
That was his best presser by far.
By far. I was done after that. I said, okay, well, shit, what else can you say? What else are you going to do? He admitted it.
I let him down. I was the reason. I agree. I think you would. Now, first of all, the only thing I'll say is I hate the guys who do that so militantly and religiously that it doesn't have meaning.
Yeah, it can't be a track. It can't be like
it can't be Mike Singletary saying, I got to watch the film. You can't. Yeah. You cannot step into every presser and be like, it's on me. That gets tired too. But there's a right time to do it. And to me, like at the end of seasons, when your players can no longer make a tackle, make a catch, make a play, that's a great time to be like, hey, you know what? Because you lost the game. and you know it wasn't good enough, and you
Mhm.
know the buck stops with you, and you
Mhm.
know you're the big dog living in a $12 million mansion, and you know that the owner is already on your side and has already extended you. That's when you step up, cover your players, and be like, you know what? We gotta watch the film and figure out the mistakes. But before we do any of it, I'll just say this one's on me. This one's on me. I got to be better. Everybody's got to be better, but it starts with me. And I wasn't good enough, and I haven't been good enough in this game to get a ring. And it's not on the players, it's not on the coaches, it's on this guy right here.
Mhm.
I think that goes such a great distance. I think you're so spot on that, Coach. And the Trey presser was such a strong moment for Kyle Shanahan, where
It
he said, "You
was.
know what? I blew
I feel
this.
like I let him down.
I let us down. I let him down." I thought that was really strong, and it
It
really
was.
did diffuse because there were people in the media that night that had sharpened their knives and they were ready to carve up Kyle. And the way he owned that, and he knew it, because he's not an idiot, and he knew it, and so he diffused it by owning it. But he could do that a little bit more. That's all I would
But
say.
I
would
will
say
say this though. But what does that
as
say
long as it's
about
genuine.
what does that say about yes? What does that say about our media though? Like our Bay Area media? Because to be quite honest with you, I didn't think that the atmosphere was that thick. I just thought that the atmosphere like was adequate for the moment.
Well,
You know what I mean? Like
it was after a preseason game, so
you just
it was a
traded
little
the
yeah.
number 3 overall pick, bro. Excuse the hell out of me for giving a damn. You know what I'm saying? So like I
Well,
feel
come
like
on. I mean, Coach, let's be honest. Corey
okay.
himself, Corey Rush, the head of
Okay.
PR, who was with the New York Giants, has stated multiple times for everybody to hear, man, this ain't New York. You know what I mean? Man, this ain't DC. Man, this ain't Chicago. It's like, in other words, the media here is very forgiving.
Yeah.
Very forgiving. But they're not a bunch of schlubs, but they're just very forgiving, and they're not quite as angry. And it's like, when faced, like in the Northeast, when faced with a coach who's taking the blame, they'll listen to him take the blame and they'll still carve him up.
Yeah.
Here, when a coach takes the blame, they'll say, "Hey, man,
we're literally just waiting for you to take it. It's there for you to do." Like,
but here it diffuses the room. There it does not.
I'm gonna tell you, there's a reason why Kyle's father and him do not like Washington. Okay. There's a reason why they don't like Washington. And a big reason why they don't like Washington is because of the media. It's because the media was not impressed with them. They were not impressed. Mike came in and
They didn't win there.
He wanted all the control. But what else is new? They're used to not winning.
Well, but right? I mean, they won here, and they went to Denver. They won in Denver. They went to Washington. They didn't win in Washington. So, you know what I mean? You always had that as a buffer.
Let me put it like this. It wasn't the fact that they didn't win. It was how they were running the organization. Like, Mike had his hands on everything, but he didn't want to be accountable for anything. And the media had a field day, and they were relentless. And there's some pieces about the Shanahans that were written by Mike Wilbon, like New York Times, Tony Kornheiser, like people out here that were literally in your face, John Keim, where these people will write some stuff about you that I guarantee you would never see in the Bay about how they feel about these guys. So
I mean, but look what they did in Denver. Look what Mike did in Denver. 138 and 86 and won 2 Super Bowls. Look what he did in Washington. 24 and 40 and only 1 playoff appearance, only 1 playoff game, and they lost it. So it's like, if they were 40 and 24 instead of 24 and 40, maybe things go differently. But you know, they didn't have that success. Success always keeps everybody at an arm's length. You know, success is that's why it is such a bottom line business. It's like, did you win or did you lose? And if you win, guess what? You don't get the criticism, but if you don't win, you get tons of it. And especially if you don't win in the Northeast or anywhere in the kind of that I-95 corridor. If you don't win in Washington, you get ripped. If you don't win in New York, you get ripped. If you don't win in New England, you get ripped. If you don't win in San Francisco, it's, you know, you don't.
Well, let me ask you something, because I don't live out there, right?
Yeah. People are just kind of, I don't want to say that we're soft, but we're just kind of.
Yeah. So let me ask you something, because like I said, I don't live out there. Out here, the Commanders are an entity, right? But they're just an entity. There are other companies and organizations out here that people care about, right? Are the Niners kind of like the top of the hill? Are they kind of like it? It can't be in Silicon Valley with all of the corporations, but how are the Niners received locally?
I just think that it's sports on the West Coast is more in the place of where it probably belongs in our society. It's a diversion. It's a diversion from the reality of life. In a lot of places, it is life. You know, like SEC football, it's life. You know, it's life and death. And in the Northeast, it's, you know, you win or you get criticized. Here, people will be critical, but only to a degree. I mean, the Giants have been horrible the last few years. Have been boring. The attendance is falling through the floorboards, and yet the media is just very much like, you know, somewhat hands off. You know, you know, the Warriors have been a dynasty. And you would, you know, literally they could take a crap in the middle of the road and people would just be like, hey, you know what? There needed to be some crap right there, you know? You know, and the Niners, I think there's pockets of the fan base and the media that will keep them, hold them accountable. But there's a lot of people that are like, hey, overall, it's been pretty damn good. You know what I mean? It's just like, we're just not quite as passionate, or as we don't tie our joy on the West Coast to our teams, like they do in other parts of the country.
On the East Coast.
Yeah, I don't know if it's the weather or what, or if it's the wealth or what it is, but it just you know, not that people don't want to win, but it's like, you know, and LA is even more so. Like, you know, is there pressure? Will there be pressure on Harbaugh to win? Yeah, but I mean, not really. I mean, not really. I mean, is there pressure on McVay to win? Yeah, but I mean, you know, not really. You know what I mean? It's just kind of, it's just not the same. It's just not quite the same cauldron. We'll just call it that.
Okay.
Nathan Johnson says this is embarrassingly messy as fuck. Fan since 1979, and this is the worst decision I've seen when the team has stacked talent. Not debatable. Staley in the building is goddamn joke. Be real, fellas. Well, that's your perspective. In the building, I mean, once again, all
right. Let's go down Navin's road. All right, Navin. All right. If we go down his route, the guy's inexperienced. All right. He's he came in, was a defensive coordinator on a couple of low-level college teams, caught lightning in the bottle for 1 year, and somebody was dumb enough to hire him. All right. He may be a really good guy outside of the field, but for all of his Brandon Staley. Yeah.
He was the hot name, right? There was a time not that long ago where to like get Brandon Staley, if you hired him after 2020.
Just remember this. Brandon Staley has never been proven to be a bad defensive coordinator, only a bad head coach. So let's see what we can do with chopping down his responsibilities and honing in what he does well. I feel like,
well said. You can also say that about is Fangio.
Yes.
Right?
But to play devil's advocate, if Vic Fangio wasn't good enough, then why is Brandon Staley good enough? And he's a Vic Fangio disciple.
Well, I mean, but we you know, and I know, I mean, Richie Pettibone in your neck of the woods.
Mhm.
Awesome defensive coordinator. Not a good head coach.
No.
Joe Bugle, maybe one of the greatest offensive line
Bugles,
coaches
best
ever.
offensive line coach of all time.
Not a great
Horrible
head
head coach.
Yeah. Buddy Ryan.
Bill Callahan.
Bill Callahan. I mean, there's just, North Turner, Dave Wanstead. I mean, these guys were really good coordinators and just didn't do it. So I don't know. I'll give Staley and Sorensen an opportunity to kind of show me what they are going forward. I can understand why they went with Sorensen for continuity. In some way, Coach, if they're going to, okay, it's like anything else. If we're talking about at the end of the day, what are we talking about? We're talking about relationships.
Mm-hmm.
I've been married for 25 years. I don't know everything there is to be about being married, but I've been married for 25 years. And what would I suggest to anybody who's getting married is that you better have a trust, right? She better trust you. You better trust her. Other than that, I don't know. Like, there's all kinds of nuances, and every relationship is a little different. But what's the essential part of a healthy relationship? Even like you and me, we have a relationship. Mm-hmm. We've been streaming together for over a year now. Mm-hmm. What do you and I, why are we better today? And I have 1,000 people in the room on this Saturday morning. Mm-hmm. Why are we better today than we were initially? Because we have cultivated a trust among the two of us.
Yeah,
where I trust you.
You got some shit on your lip. This is trust. You got some shit on you. There you go. That's trust.
Spittle.
There you go.
I trust you. You trust me. We've built a trust. The Niners got rid of Wilks because I think at the end of the day, Shanahan didn't trust him. So is Sorensen better than Wilks? I would say Wilks knows more defensive football than Sorensen. Mm-hmm. Wilks knows more about being a defensive coordinator than Sorensen, in my opinion. But there's a trust. There's a trust mm-hmm. between Sorensen and and Johnny Holland, and a trust between Sorensen and Nick, and Chris, I should say, Chris Kacherik. There's a trust between probably Bullocks and Sorensen, because Sorensen is in-house, so there's a trust there. Mm-hmm. And so is he better than other candidates? I don't think so, but I'll give him a chance, because at the end of the day, if you don't have trust, you can't have guys going behind the court. You can't have the existing coaches have more of a trust with Shanahan, and he has more of a trust in them than the coordinator. It just is not healthy. So I think Sorensen in some ways might be a good hire, just from the standpoint of they didn't want to change their D. They wanted to have a trust. He doesn't change the D. He probably has the trust. As far as Staley goes, Staley was the hottest name in coaching in 2020. He's not the hottest name in coaching right now. We'll see where it goes from there. I really don't. I don't know. I don't even know what he's going to do. What is the assistant head coach's responsibilities? I don't even know.
I mean, obviously, the assistant head coach, you would look at him being able to handle some subset of game day duties, right? So I think that if I was Kyle and I had an assistant head coach, when we ask questions like, well, who's Kyle talking to about decisions about what to do on certain downs during certain positions of the field, red flag challenge negotiations, like should we throw our flag here or shouldn't we? Figuring out also, I feel like from a DC standpoint, it's obvious that they want the DC on the field. But maybe Brandon Staley could be that guy that's letting Kyle know, like, hey, man, as far as the flow is concerned right now, we're kind of on E, or the defense is getting tired right now. Like, I really do believe that, they're only as good as their communication. I don't see a lot of what Brandon Staley can do to help Kyle outside of game day, whereas I feel like a lot of the behind the scenes application of what Brandon Staley is going to do as far as like his day-to-day is concerned, I feel like it's going to be assistant Nick Sorensen. This is the first time he's ever done this. So yeah, I believe that Brandon Staley would be really instrumental in that position, where he can kind of lead from behind. help out Nick Sorensen with figuring out how he can be the best defensive coordinator that he wants to be. And on game days, being an assistant to Kyle with helping him with game flow and game management. That's kind of like his job. I feel like in a way that's was Coach Lynn's job.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm eager to talk to Kyle and ask him what Brandon Staley's, what is he going to do exactly? What's his game day? What's he going to do on game day to help you win? And what's he going to do preparation wise to help you win? And who knows? Maybe it'll be exactly what Lynn did. Maybe it'll be different. Mongreen Eggcorn says, Krug, coach, would you bail on Graham and Winters with a package deal for Aziz and drafting Cedric Gray in the hopes that Dre returns as close to form as in previous years after the Achilles repair? You're lazy, Larry. First of all, I don't think Graham and Winters are going to be in camp next year with the Niners. I would definitely go sign Aziz. And if I can draft Cedric Gray, I'm not taking him in the first round, but if I come up on my second round pick and Cedric Gray's there, I'm taking him. I'm a big Cedric Gray fan. And to me when you have an all-world linebacker, an all-pro linebacker, that's valuable in any round. So I love Cedric Gray. I think he's the safest player in the draft. He's good. He's made 375 tackles or whatever it is at North Carolina over the last 3 years.
That boy's a machine.
He's a machine. Absolute machine. If I can get Cedric Gray, I will. And as far as Aziz, I think Aziz is a great free agent. Why? Because when you sign a free agent, there's what you're getting typically as a player if it's the same scheme. But if it's a different scheme, you're rolling the dice on what you're getting. And then you're also rolling the dice on, does he fit your culture? Does he fit your locker room? With Aziz, there's no rolling the dice on any of it. He fits your D. He fits your locker room. He fits your culture. So, yeah, to me, it's just a matter of what's his asking price. Can you meet it? I love Aziz, and I'd definitely bring him back.
You've seen the latest post from Aziz, right?
Yeah, where he had the interception of Cousins from 2021 in a Niner uniform. Yeah, I mean, I did a video on it the other day. I love Aziz. I think Aziz, and Aziz was there for the Green Bay game on the sideline while he's under contract with Tennessee. So I think that was very revealing. Young D says, let's trade Ayuk. We'll get to that in a sec. Charlie Sinclair says, Staley with the Rams. It was the 2020 COVID year. LA won the Super Bowl in 2021, his first year with LAC. Okay, but they were number one across the board, points and yards allowed per game in the year he was there. Charlie Sinclair, York fired Harbaugh because he didn't win the Super Bowl. York even claims it was a mutual parting. No. York fired Harbaugh nothing because of the Super Bowl. York fired Harbaugh because Harbaugh had a dysfunctional relationship with Parag, a dysfunctional relationship with Jed, and a dysfunctional relationship with Trent. And that was the hierarchy at the time. That's why Harbaugh was fired, not because of the Super Bowl.
He loved the team too hard. He did. That was kind of like his sin.
You got to you have to cultivate key professional relationships when you're in business. Wherever you work, it's no different than this where the Niners work. And Kyle would be out tomorrow if he had not cultivated good relationships with Jed, Parag, and John Lynch. If John Lynch, Parag, and Jed all agreed they didn't like Kyle would be fired.
Yeah.
That's what happened with Harbaugh. Those guys all agreed that they didn't like Harbaugh. We got this one from Richie. Kyle Shanahan is the embodying the game manager argument. Kyle Shanahan wanted to be considered a game changer, but could have won 3 Super Bowls if he was a game manager as a coach and play caller. His ego is holding us back. There's a lot of people.
Another Brock Purdy avatar. I'm telling you, man.
There you go. You're either you're a Purdy head or you're a Shanahan head. And we'll update that poll, by the way, for you in a minute here.
Yeah,
Charlie
what's that looking like?
Yeah, right now. Let me just reboot it. We have 612 votes. Shanahan's winning. The question was, who had the bigger impact on the 49ers losing the Super Bowl 58? Brock Purdy or Kyle Shanahan. 612 votes. 91% Shanahan, 9% Purdy.
I told you, bro.
Isn't that interesting, though?
Yeah, man.
Charlie Sinclair says Joey hates him. I'm sure he told Nick as far as about Staley.
Brandon Staley, yeah.
Daryl Granville, member for 10 months. He says, GM family, can each of you give us a draft crush or sleeper you guys like that isn't known? Oh, that's a good one. Do you have a draft crush or sleeper that you are fired up about? I do have one, of course. You know me. I've got more than one, but I can give you a couple that are really tremendous. Do you have one at all, Coach? Yet? I mean,
my draft crush is Amarius Mims.
You like Amarius Mims? Okay,
I love him. I mean, I think he's a guy that we can get in
prototype
6'7". 350. I mean, he's bigger than what they're saying he is. He can run, flexible, and his ceiling is through the roof. He's not even close to how good he can really be. Only played 8 games. I feel like he's a guy that we can stick over at right tackle. And as soon as Trent gives us his swan song, we can stick him right over there at left tackle, and the Merritt will be just fine. So that's my crush. That's my crush.
I like Rook Aroro.
Oh, you like Rook, the D tackle?
Aroro. That's his name. Rook Aroro from Clemson. Yeah, I love his athleticism. I love his film. He's tremendous. I love Cedric Gray, Max Melton. These are all Max Melton, the corner from Rutgers, but he ran 4 threes yesterday. So Max Melton is no longer a sleeper. But as far as a deep sleeper, there's a tight end from Furman. Where's Furman, Coach?
Furman is I want to say Furman's in Tennessee or Georgia.
Oh, okay.
Georgia?
I thought maybe it was in Virginia. But he played do you know where Ferris State is? Because he played hoops at Ferris State, and then he transferred to Furman, and he's a tight end. He's a 6'7" tight end.
Furman's in Greenville, South Carolina.
Okay, so he plays for Furman right now. He's a tight end, but he's a mechanical engineering major, which that tells you all you need to know. He's super smart, right? I mean, it's like, if you're an engineering major, you're smart. If you're a mechanical engineering major, you're really smart. And this guy's name's Mason Pline. He's a 6'7", 6'8" power forward who could run and dunk and jam, and he's super athletic in basketball. He was a good basketball player at Ferris State. He also has 10.5-inch hands, is kind of nasty as a run blocker, and, has basketball-like athleticism. I love Mason Pline. In fact, I did a video on him this week, and Kev told me this morning, he's like, Mason Pline saw our video and liked it. So there you go. Mason Pline, day 3, tight end from Furman. To me, that's the guy you want to complement George Kittle. Super smart, super athletic, 6'7", but tough in the run game. More of a receiver than a blocker, but a crazy athlete. Really, really good athlete. And then also, I'll tell you 2 other guys that I really like as far as sleeper offensive linemen. I would love to see the Niners draft the right side of the South Dakota State offensive line. They have Garrett Greenfield at right tackle and Mason McCormick at right guard. And these guys play incredibly well off of one another. And they're both going to go in the mid rounds. And I like both those guys, Garrett Greenfield and Mason McCormick from South Dakota State.
I got a sneaky fullback that I like in this year's draft. Jaheim Bell, played running back out of Florida State, 6'3", 230, hard runner, shifty, really good in the open field, actually a really good route runner. I feel like it'd be good for us to try to get somebody that can start replacing Juice. And he's a really big target. Also tough to bring down. Somebody that I would love for us to take a look at, Jaheim Bell out of Florida State. Okay,
I'll give you one more. And this guy's such a sleeper that you're not going to find him in any mock draft. But I love this player. His name is Elijah Chapman. He's a defensive lineman for SMU. He's only 6 feet tall, but he's 280 pounds. He's from Shreveport, Louisiana, and he is just a monster. Just a monster. Love Elijah Chapman. And as I said, he probably is not going to get drafted. He's probably going to be, or if he is, it's a late day three guy. Love him. Think his motor, his toughness. Well, I mean, he's 6 feet 280, but he can really move. He can, he's a pass rusher. He's got a crazy motor. He's a little undersized, but like I would take him as a replacement for Kevin Givens. You're giving away about 3 inches of height, but this kid's motor is crazy great. Elijah Chapman.
There's also somebody else who I feel like could be a sneaky grab. He's actually kind of falling, and he's somebody that I really thought was going to be at the top of a lot of prospect lists once we got going. But I love James Williams, man, the safety out of Miami, man.
Is he a safety?
Yeah, 6'5", 225.
Yeah.
I mean, he's somebody that you can. Yeah, dude, there's somebody you can bring down in the box. Also kind of like be that Jimmy Ward dime linebacker for us. He's played in space, can play single high over at Miami, and which he could do for us. And he's just also a big body. Like, to be honest with you, James, if you were impressed with Kyle Hamilton out of Baltimore, okay, James Williams is my player comp for him.
Wow.
Where Kyle Hamilton out of Baltimore, long, rangy, covers a lot of space, can play linebacker, but still long enough to play tight ends and not be outmatched and undersized, and has enough pop to get out in the flat and cover and be a cloud defender. I'm telling you, man, James Williams, whoever gets him, he's going to be a force, because you just don't see that type of size and athleticism on the safety side. Like, if you think about it, now that you're looking at these guys are kind of like the next iteration of what we all believe Sean Taylor would be before he left away, God rest his soul, right? When Sean Taylor came in out of Miami at 6'4", maybe 6'3" and 3/4, 230 pounds, running a legit high 4.3 with the nastiness of a linebacker, the ball skills of a corner, and the ranginess of a safety, and he had the body to deal with it. Sean Taylor, if you guys remember, came in the league at 230 to 240 pounds playing safety. He had to lose weight. And this was along the times where you had big receivers like T.O. and Randy Moss walking around who were scared to go against safeties like this. So I like this guy. He's an ode to Cam Chancellor. My big safety, Sean Taylor. James Williams, man, out of Miami. He's the next one. Kyle Hamilton started it back up, but I think we're going to start seeing a run on big safeties.
I love that player. I seriously, I've watched him a lot. That's one of my favorite guys. I love James Williams. That's a great call. Is he a safety? Is he a linebacker? I don't know. Keep
him at safety. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, how much of a shame? Like, Larry, you're a scout guy.
Well, you know what? You know what I really think? You know what I see? I see the guy that could potentially snuff out the Travis Kelce candle.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
That's what I'm saying. That's why you don't put him at linebacker.
Right.
You put him at safety. Like, how much of a shame would it be to bastardize his skill set by putting him closer to the line of scrimmage? He can run.
Yeah.
Let him play from depth.
Let him put him on Kelce, and let's see if Kelce can shake this cat. I don't think he can.
It ain't happening.
Yeah,
it ain't happening. Not with what James Williams brings. And you know what's crazy? They're going to start doing that. There's going to be, I feel like, remember how Miami, their skill set, I'm talking about the Jimmy Johnson days, when Miami was taking linebackers and turning them into D linemen. They were taking safeties and corners and turning them into linebackers. And this is in the biggest era of athlete in football days, right? And that's how they generated so much speed, right? Now, I'm starting to see even I got some friends out here that are kind of on the recruiting trails. Now, coaches are starting to grab like 2 guards from like who play basketball that are like 6'4", 6'5". They can play that safety role. They can get on top of these big tight ends, and they can cover a lot of space, and they're already naturally agile. So I'm telling you, man, the game is awesome because you get to see how it just changes and morphs in front of you. So James Williams, man, he's going to be a big time prospect.
Oh, I love him. Well, that to me is no doubt. That's a no doubter. I love James Williams. All right, we got another one here from General Admission. Surviving Kyle needs to be a Netflix documentary. That's awesome. That's awesome. JD Durham. I'm not sure, but JD, thank you. Lester, San Jose, the skeptic tank. Kyle is a better head coach than people realize. He's loyal when he needs to be and cutthroat when he needs to be, maybe a little too honest for many. Old school. 49er Talk Show. Krueger, if you were a GM, would you choose Kyle or Bill or wait one more year for a Super Bowl loss or an NFC Championship loss? And if you choose Kyle, no Bill again. I think Bill is a great defensive coach who then got Tom Brady. And I think that Bill is a great defensive coach. I don't think Bill is I don't think Bill Belichick is Bill Walsh. I think Bill Belichick, Bill Walsh had an incredible tree and his coaches went other places and did incredible things. The Belichick tree is like a bush. It's not even
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. The players that he coached is his predecessor. Like, come on. Like, talk about a tree. Like, the Belichick tree may not be like everybody won championships. Part of the reason why is because he was too busy winning the whole damn time. So there's that part too. You just got to add that too.
Mangini and Weiss and all these guys. I mean, it's like I think Bill Belichick is the greatest defensive coach in the history of the NFL.
Okay.
But as far as I think he benefited a lot from Brady. And I think we saw what Belichick was in Cleveland and we saw what Belichick was without a quarterback in New England. By the way, I saw today that they're saying they're going to shop Mac Jones for a fifth round pick. I got one question on the back end on that too. We got this one from, I would go with Kyle. Over Belichick, even though Belichick.
Yeah, I think the game is kind of passed Bill by a little bit. I think it's a little younger, more agile game. You don't have as much control as you would like to as a coach. You don't spend as much time with the players as Bill used to. It's harder. Yeah.
I mean, I really do think Kyle's offense produces points. Now that you have Purdy, it makes it even harder because now you have Purdy and Belichick. Who knows? I mean, I guess I'd have to know who Belichick's offensive coordinator is going to be. We got this one from James Wilson. He says, great show, guys. Pour up off-season needs to end the season. I'm on a 13-1 work shift. 93 hours. Get to work, please, and represent. Wishing the best for 2024. Go 90. Oh, go Niners.
49ers.
Niners get to work,
49ers.
please. Okay. Niners get to work and please represent. Wishing the best for 2024. Go Niners. Great show, guys. Pour up off-season needs.
Great show, guys. Pour up off-season needs to the end season. I'm on 13.
I think you need a rock in the middle, like a one technique tackle, right? To go with Hargrave. Because I'm not sure Armstead can be that anymore health-wise. I think you need a speed rusher opposite Nick Bosa. I think you need at least 2 or 3 really competent D-line rotation pieces.
Okay.
So that's what you need up front. You need at least one more really great all-world linebacker. You need at least one big-time corner with some size and some hitting ability. You need another tight end for sure. You need a right tackle. You need a right guard. You need one more dynamic weapon.
You need a corner.
Could be a wide receiver, could be a running back. And I said number one corner. So that's what they need. They have about 10 needs. I mean, it's not like they don't need anything. They need a lot. You know, that's the assessment. Rome says, what does the assistant head coach do for us? It's a great question. We're going to have to ask that question. Navin R. Johnson, Kyle and Staley equals no accountability duo. I can't see players on D respecting Staley at all. cool with Sorensen 100. The Staley thing is dumb and not needed. Noted. And that's all I'll say there. Stephen Draper says, drunk Kyle from Drunk Monday still making decisions. Wow, Stephen's pissed. Tyler Wise Guy, I think Staley's going to help with mixing up coverages that look like zone, that are man, and man that look like zone. He will help Sorensen. Tyler Wise Guy, I won't be surprised if Kyle drafts the Texas tight end. What, Latavian Sanders, is that his name?
Yeah.
He's athletic as hell. I saw that one-handed catch from earlier this year. It was crazy. James Foster, enjoy Coach's perspective on the Saturday show.
Thanks, James.
We're glad you do. Okay, let's hit a couple other topics. We're an hour and 35 minutes into our live stream. We're brought to you once again by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California, as well as MarinAutoglass.com, Underdog Fantasy, and Sharp Corners Sports Cards and Collectibles. Call Anthony Catania, 831-521-5264. All the links to all of our sponsors will be listed in the description. All right, the Niners have met with a bunch of players in Indy. Cornerbacks, Enos Rakestra from Missouri, Max Melton from Rutgers, those two guys. I'll tell you, I saw an interview yesterday on the NFL Network of Terrion Arnold. And
cornerback from Bama.
I love Terrion Arnold. Terrion Arnold is my if I mean the corner need is not primary, it's more secondary because you have other corners including Mooney Ward and Demo.
He's just a great kid.
But Terrion Arnold is not just a great kid, he's a great athlete and a great kid. And when you can get a great athlete and a great kid, that's a foundation piece player. I'll say this, if Terrion Arnold is on the board when my team's picking, I don't care what I need. I would have a hard time not drafting that kid. I mean, I don't know if you saw it, but he did an interview yesterday with the Stacey Dale or Tracy Dale or whatever from the NFL Network or NFL.com. It was amazing. He was shouting out his mother for driving him to practice, and he's like, sent her a message at the end of the combine. It was so powerful, so strong, so rooted in everything that I believe in as a parent. And then the kid's tape and athleticism are off the charts. I would have a really hard time passing on Terrion Arnold. He is awesome. I know the other corner's good too, but that kid is really good.
Yeah, he's fast, instinctual. Was challenged a lot as the number one corner. Matter of fact, had to fight his way onto the field. There's another corner there, Kool-Aid McKinstry, that played opposite of him. He is support. But I will say that Terrion Arnold is just like, he's a Nick Saban favorite. I mean, he's a leader on defense, instinctual, tackles really well, sound player, good speed, good top end speed too. Good in and out of his drop, as far as getting to the top of his zone. And he's long. On top of it, he's not an undersized kid, and I feel like he's got more weight to put on. He can actually gain some weight. Terrion is the type of guy that honestly I could see him playing corner for us, and if we got put in a pinch, playing safety as well. He's that type of athlete. He's kind of a do-it-all type of dude, and also he'll be an asset on special teams if we picked him up. So honestly,
who's better between McKinstry and Arnold? Not who's going first. It's going to be Arnold,
right?
Who do you think is going to be the better pro?
Terrion Arnold's going to be the better pro.
Okay.
Yeah. Kool-Aid is cool, but when Kool-Aid first came to Bama, he kind of had his heart set in a lot of different places. He's a very talented basketball player. He wanted to be a dual sport athlete when he first came to Alabama, and Coach Saban kind of sat him down and said, you need to make a decision where you need to be. Now, one thing about Kool-Aid is that he's been hurt throughout his career. Right. So him being hurt right now necessarily isn't any news. So that's one thing I will say right now. And then as far as like just, in college, you get a little bit more of these guys aren't pros, so you get more of like a hands-on feel of how they're matriculating through the program. And Terrian Arnold and Miss Terry, which is Coach Saban's wife, they're best friends. Like they share books together. He's a culture fit. Like he would come here and make other pros kind of tighten their game up because of how put together he is. He's that type of kid.
Yeah, special player. He's not going to be
special
available
type
to
of
them.
kid.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be available to the Niners, but Niners did meet with they didn't meet with him. They met with Enos Rakestraw, Max Melton, who I love from Rutgers, DeCamerion Richardson from Mississippi State, and Kool-Aid McKinstry from Bama. The Niners
I got a couple of other names too. If you
go ahead.
You have them?
No,
you sure?
Those just the corners.
Oh, go ahead then. Go ahead.
Okay, so
I'm sure you're going to name who I was going to name. Yeah.
Well, wide receiver wise, I thought this was kind of interesting. The Niners met with Jalen McMillan from Washington. Not a huge fan. Xavier Legette from South Carolina. I am a big fan of his. Ladd McConkey from Georgia. Luke McCaffrey from Rice. Bub Means from Pitt, who can flat out roll. Xavier Worthy from Texas. Brendan Rice from SC. Troy Franklin from Oregon. And Brian Thomas Jr., who I love from LSU. What do you make of that, Coach? They have Juwan Jennings as a restricted. They have Debo signed. Lynch is on record as saying they want to sign Ayuk. You have Danny Gray. You have Ronnie Bell. You have Tay Martin. You have, they don't need a receiver. They're meeting with a lot of day 2 receivers. I don't love Jalen McMillan, but they met with him. They met with Xavier Legette, Ladd McConkey, McCaffrey, Means.
Bub Means is a dog.
Means can fly, too. I mean, he can really run. Brian Thomas is crazy good. I get the feeling that the 49ers understand that Juwan Jennings' restricted free agent market could get out of hand, and they are getting – I don't think they can trade Debo. I don't think they want to trade Ayuk. I don't think they want to trade Juwan, but I don't think they can keep all 3 of those guys. I think Juwan is going to get, especially after the way he played in the Super Bowl and how many Niner people are around the league. You got Rand Carthon in Tennessee. You got D'Amico in Houston with Slowick. I think somebody's going to come knocking in restricted free agency for Juwan. They put a second-round tender on him. I think the Niners would take like a 3rd-round pick for Juwan, and I think they're looking into the draft for Juwan's replacement. I really do. I agree.
What
do you make of it?
I agree.
Or do you think Debo or Ayuk get dealt?
That's too much of a blow for the loss that we just took, right? For BA to go somewhere and for BA to move on, it's kind of hard to say that we're running it back with losing a piece like BA, right? And I feel the same way about Debo. I mean, I've made my thoughts known about how I feel about Debo underplaying his contract, and I don't think that he's worth the $28 million that he's due this year. However, I still do believe that there's a way that he restructures and in lieu of getting BA paid. I do believe that Juwan Jennings is the odd man out, and he will get outpriced. But one of the reasons why I feel like he'll get outpriced is because he deserves it. But to be quite frank, it's the last game he had. I mean, if we win that game, it's kind of hard not to argue that Juwan Jennings is not the MVP of the Super Bowl.
Right.
It's kind of hard to argue that. So with that said, I mean, your last tape is your best tape. You know what I'm saying? Your best tape is your last tape. So, he may have priced us out the game, man. It may look like they are looking for life after Juwan because he played so well. I mean, right now, it's going to be hard finding somebody that blocks like him. I understand getting open, but it's known since Juwan has been here. I mean, he didn't play against the Ravens game. And in my opinion, that was kind of like the story of the game. He was sorely missed because we were moving the ball up and down the field on the Ravens. That wasn't the issue. It's the turnovers. But what really were the turnovers, I feel like the turnovers were the symptoms, but the disease was the fact that we couldn't prove to the Ravens that we can consistently run the ball. And we got caught throwing the ball way too many times. And I feel like a lot of that was because of, 1, our offensive line, but 2, we were missing Juwan that game. And he is a very good blocker. That's the thing. if they're going to find a receiver, that's cool. But Juwan is way more than just a receiver. He's almost like a glorified move tight end, right? Like I feel like he's like a detached tight end in certain aspects. So it's going to be tough sledding, replacing him. Hopefully we don't have to. Spending a second round pick on a guy like Juwan is also a little bit rich too, to be honest. And I see what they're doing. If they had a third round tender on him, I would feel a little bit more concerned because I'd be saying he's as good as gone. He's definitely worth a third round tender. Somebody to get on your field right away in the third round and actually play. There's not a lot of third round picks unless you're a lineman that can actually get on your field and contribute right away. So he'd be worth that. But a second round pick, I do feel like that teams may come sniffing around, but they'll balk. Second round pick is a really big price tag to pay for a third option. I don't see any team taking Juwan on as a second option of their offense.
He just doesn't run that well, but
he doesn't run that. Yeah, he doesn't run that well.
The guy plays big in big games, so it's like.
But for us, though, you know what I mean? Like it's where we put him, the positions in which we put him. So
I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do there, but I get the feeling that they're going to trade Juwan and go with one of these receivers. They also had a bunch of running backs they worked out or visited with. Frank Gore Jr., who I love, Jawar Jordan from Louisville, Dejon Edwards from Georgia, who's super athletic. And then I'll tell you, one of my sleeper guys in the draft I love is Isaac Guerendo for Louisville, who I kind of think of. He ran, by the way, Coach, yesterday, Isaac Guerendo, 4.33 at 228 pounds or whatever he is. He's kind of a one back, but man, if I was going to get rid of Juice, I would try to replace Juice with this kid because Juice is obviously better, can do a bunch of things, but they don't use him tons as a blocker. It seems like he's more of like a gadget guy. And I think Guerendo could be a fullback with speed. And
how much does he weigh?
I think he weighs like 225 and he ran 4.33.
That's big enough.
Oh yeah. I mean,
that would be a huge weapon for us too, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Being able to have that type of speed.
The other thing is, who's your third quarterback? Do you re-sign Darnold? Do you re-sign Brandon Allen? And do you replace one of those guys with either a young veteran? They did work out, or they did meet with Michael Pratt from Tulane, who had a really good year for Tulane. I've been kind of hot to trot on Milton, Joe Milton. And by the way, I did a video on Joe Milton, and Kev was sending me a list of the people who liked it. It was like NBA stars and NFL stars, and Joe Milton has a huge fan base. Huge fan base. People are coming out of the woodwork saying Joe Milton. I love Joe Milton. Joe Johnson, remember the former two guard for the Celtics and Bucks, I think. He liked it. I mean, it was unbelievable, some of the people who liked it. But as far as quarterback goes, we know Purdy's going to be in that room. I think Darnold's going to walk. And I think Brandon Allen's coming back. But I bring this up, Coach, because I'm doing a video later today on this.
Okay.
If you say, hey, what do you think of Drake May? What do you think of Caleb Williams? What do you think of Jaden Daniels? What do you think of Michael Penix, J.J. McCarthy, Bo Nix? I would say most football people like all those guys. Oh, I love all those guys. But then you go around and you look, it's like you're good in college until you come to the NFL and you're bad in the NFL. And I'm going to give you these are, mostly Hall of Fame quarterbacks. Terry Bradshaw going into 1975 had 48 touchdowns and 81 interceptions, became a Hall of Famer. Troy Aikman, first 3 seasons in the NFL, 14-24. Steve Young with the Buccaneers, 3-16 with 11 touchdowns and 21 picks, Hall of Famer. Roger Staubach, 2 touchdowns or 3 touchdowns, 10 picks, first 2 years, Hall of Famer. Dan Fouts, first 5 years in the NFL, went 12, 30, and 1 with 24 touchdowns, 57 interceptions. Sonny Jurgensen wasn't good until he was 27. Kurt Warner didn't bust out till he was 28. Lenny Dawson wasn't good until he was 27. Alex Smith, going into 2011 when Harbaugh was hired, was 19-31 with just totally marginal stats. I bring this up to say there's this group of quarterbacks that I'm going to name for you next. And these guys are all kind of stocks down. But some history tells us that a couple of these guys are going to be good. And here's the group. Zach Wilson, Mac Jones. All these guys are like 27 or younger. Zach Wilson, Mac Jones, Sam Darnold, Kenny Pickett, Justin Fields, Kyler Murray, Daniel Jones, Davis Mills, Sam Howell, Trey Lance, Jake Browning, Drew Lock, Bryce Young, Malik Willis, Desmond Ridder, Aiden O'Connell. Those are all NFL quarterbacks who are 27 or younger. That's like 15 or 16 guys. If you name those 6 draft eligible guys, everybody loves all of them and they're all going to be great. But guess what? It was just a couple years ago that Justin Fields was going to be great and Zach Wilson was going to be great and Kyler was going to be awesome and Bryce Young and all these guys. So of those young quarterbacks that to date have not been great, would you want to bring any of those guys in as your third string quarterback? Do you believe in any of the young, QBs that have come into the league and kind of fallen on their face? Or would you rather go get a rookie?
I'd kick the tires on Mac Jones.
You can get him, according to the report this morning, for a 5th round pick. Would you trade a 5th round pick for Mac Jones? It's pretty accurate.
Yeah. For our third quarterback. I mean, the thing about it is that you don't want to get a guy like the elephant in the room is Trey Lance. Let's just put it out there. But you don't help Trey Lance by keeping him third on the depth because he has no time on task. He doesn't play. The reason why Mac Jones would work is because Mac Jones actually has starting experience. He's played before. Getting him on would actually be a good thing for the team. And I feel like in many respects, it give Kyle another project, be able to help our team. But as far as like young guys, like maybe Mac Jones, maybe Kenny Pickett, that's about it. I wouldn't take on Zach Wilson.
What about, obviously Bryce Young's not available, but like, do you think Bryce Young's going to be a good NFL quarterback?
No.
Okay. Do you see any potential in any of those other guys? I thought Drew Lock looked really good against the Niners this year.
Yeah, Drew Lock has a live arm. He's just his issue is his decision making. He kind of just goes rogue.
It'll be interesting. Wouldn't it be interesting if the Niners wind up with Mac Jones?
That'd be tight. You know what I'm saying? One man's trash.
Yeah. I mean, you just never know.
Maybe crazy.
Okay, a couple last ones and then we'll jet. The Niners have met with a lot of defensive linemen that are going to be right there on the board when they pick in the first round. Mason Smith, who was an all-world recruit for LSU. McKinley Jackson, 2-time captain for A&M, one technique. Darius Robinson from Missouri. Austin Booker from Kansas. All these guys met with the 49ers at the combine. Do you have a player at the end of the first round? Would you go offensive tackle, defensive end? Do you have a preference for a player at the end of the first round?
I mean, I would go if I had to go at 31, I would either get Darius Robinson. I wouldn't be mad at that. 6'5", 300-pound kid, runs a 4.9. The speed that you need, run defender that you need. It would be, carbon copy of what we do on our offense. But outside of my guy who I want, which is Amarius Mims, I think going for center is the way to go, man. Like, and in my opinion, you can get the best center in the draft at 31, right? I think that Zach Frazier out of
Who
West
is that?
Virginia.
Is it Zach Frazier or is it Jackson Powers Johnson?
It's either the two. It's neck and neck. But honestly, there's three that I would not be upset with at all. That would be
a lot
Cedric
of people like
Van
the
Pran,
Georgia kid. Yeah,
Cedric Van Pran, Zach Frazier, and Jackson Powers Johnson. All three of those guys are can't miss guys at center. And like I said, at center, you do elevate one position, but you elevate the whole line by bringing in a good center. Especially you elevate the offense. You can run the ball in both of the A gaps. They're not compromised anymore. You got strong scoop box on the backside and strong combo blocks on the front side for inside zone that we like to do. We all know that Kyle likes to pop the center out for pulling on play action. We get us a little bit more athleticism at the stage and stronger. Then also with Brock, the style of quarterback we have, Brock is more susceptible to run outside of the pocket when the pocket starts collapsing in front of him. We need stronger guys up front to take on bull rushes and guys that know that, you can quite frankly just blow Jake Brindle off the ball. Don't believe me? Go back and watch some of that Minnesota tape. Go back and watch some of that Cincinnati tape. Jake Brindle was struggling in those games. So I would take a center. If you really got to pick at 31, I'd pick a first-round center. From there, you can build out on the O-line. You can kick Colton McKivitz inside, go get you a tackle. There's a lot of things you can do as you get a center.
Let me give you another name at center that I love, and I've watched a lot of film on this kid. His name's Bo Limmer. Mm-hmm. Bo is spelled B-A-U-X, Limmer. He was the Arkansas center. This guy is something else, man. One, he's an academic All-American. He was first team All-SEC this year. And just a tremendous prospect. He's one of the strongest guys on the team. He squats 605. He benches 445. I loved him in the one-on-ones at Mobile. Bo Limmer is his name. One other question here. John Feliciano, it sounds like, is coming back. Mm-hmm. But who got cut this week is Laken Tomlinson. And John Lynch was like, hey, yeah, we're going to call Laken's we're going to call Laken's agent and see, where he's at. He signed a 3-year, $40 million deal with the Jets. The guy played 114 straight starts. How do you feel about the idea of bringing back Laken Tomlinson at right guard?
For the right price tag. He made $13 million last year. No way in hell is that happening. Right now, we just got finished talking about Jake Brindle, and we want him to get up out of here, and he's making 4.6 on the cap this year. My thing is that I understand that we're not spending a lot of money on our offensive line, but that don't mean you should just start spending, period. Right now, even if you go through PFF for ranked offensive guards in the NFL, Laken Tomlinson is ranked he's not even ranked in the top 50 of offensive guards in passing and run fits in PFF scores. And John Feliciano is ranked in the top 5, right at 5 in PFF rankings for guards for run blocking and pass blocking for the year. And he's cheaper than Laken Tomlinson now. So
you were an offensive lineman coach.
Yes.
How much credence do you put in the PFF? Honestly,
none whatsoever. It was just something that I know people are going to go back and watch.
Really, none. I just never. I know. I always want to put some credence because I know.
Well, let me put it like this. I put credence into it. I put credence into it when it comes to giving me like a 10,000-foot view of who do I need to start looking at, right? But I don't put credence into it as you're 1, you're 2, so you must be better than 1. I don't put credence into it like that. No, but I brought this up because the disparity, the numbers were so disparaging from John Feliciano being a ranked top 5 guard in the PFF and being cheaper than a guy that's not even ranked in the top 50, which is Laken Tomlinson. And Laken Tomlinson started the entire time. Also, come on, man. Like, we remember what he was before he left here. He used to always get beat on pass protection. He would always be confused. He was a good run blocker, but he left more to be strong. Good run blocker, but he left more to be desired in pass protection. And that's like the biggest issue that we used to have at that left guard spot. And quite frankly, I feel like Aaron Banks is really good at what he does at the left guard spot. And to take it a step further, Laken Tomlinson played left guard in college, okay? He got drafted by Detroit where they stuck him at right guard, and he struggled. He struggled big time in Detroit. That's part of the reason why we got him, because we put him back to his original position. Now, if we took him on, we're not moving Aaron Banks over to right guard, because when Aaron Banks first came in here, he struggled at right guard, and we had to put him over at left guard. So bringing in Laken Tomlinson to put him at the right guard is kind of like a fool's errand in my perspective.
You can't spend big money at center or guard. You can't. It's just not when you have as many talented players as the Niners do. We got this one from Cap. He says, "Wrap this up, Larry. I got things to do." I hear you. I do too.
Yeah, the combine just started.
I know. I gotta jump. Let me see if I got everything. Everybody's supers. No, we got a couple more here. Great one. 765. Jordan Travis, the best quarterback in this draft class.
Kid out of Florida State?
Yeah, Florida State. I saw how bad they were without him late in the year. That's for damn sure. They were like two different teams. Joe Schmidt hits on like all the guys that I love in this draft. He says Renardo Green, that's the Florida State corner. Mo Kamara, that's the Colorado State edge rusher. Isaac Guerrero, that's the Louisville running back, one back, fullback, and Garrett Greenfield from South Dakota State. Joe, I'll say this: we're like-minded, so we're either both wrong as hell, or we're geniuses. We're geniuses. We're like-minded geniuses, because I agree with all those picks. If I could have all those guys, I would take all those guys. All right. Last one. Mike Silver said, "Man, the Niners are going to come out and they are going to make some big moves." And I don't know, Coach, what he's referring to or who his sources are, but it's Mike Silver. And when I say
he's
that,
always right.
Mike is connected. He's connected. He's really, he's one of the guys I really do have tremendous respect for. Not that I don't have respect for others, but I really have tremendous respect for Mike. What do you think? What's a big move? Either a big signing or a big, does that mean they're going to cut or trade Eric Armstead? Does that mean they're going to cut or trade Debo, Kittle? Does that mean they're going to try to make a big play to sign Chris Jones? Does that mean they're going to trade a second-round pick for L'Jarius Sneed? What do you think? If Silver's right, and the Niners are going to make a big, dramatic, roster-altering move, who's coming or who's going? What do you think? We're all guessing at this point. We might as well throw in a guess.
I am. I'm trying to think of the most egregious thing.
I'm thinking it might be
a draft day trade.
Well, I'm thinking it might be a cut of Eric Armstead in a pursuit of either Jones or DJ Reader. Because look at it this way. Armstead is long in the tooth. He's getting beat up.
He is.
And you have Hargrave. What do you need opposite Hargrave? You need that run plugger. In some ways, I think you might be able to get DJ Reader, who might be a better run plugger next to Hargrave than Armstead. I don't know. To me, it's probably something with their defensive line, but it could be Kittle. But Kittle is so much about their swagger. It could be Debo. I know Grant suggested maybe they would trade Debo, but I think the cap hit is pretty severe. I think it's going to be my guess is it's Armstead, and they either go for a D tackle in the draft, or it's Armstead and they go for a big D tackle in free agency. That would be my guess.
Yeah, they might trade Armstead. I feel like everybody else is virtually off limits. I can't see them doing anything with Debo, nor Trent, or Christian. They may trade BA, maybe a draft day trade with BA to move up. somebody that they really believe in. But yeah, I think like the squeaky wheel is Eric Armstead. Right now, I mean, to me, it would be Javon Hargraves, but he just got here. So I don't see that happening. And the only reason why this doesn't make that much sense is they just extended him at the beginning of this year, didn't they?
Armstead?
Yeah.
I don't know his cap situation. I think you're right, though.
Yeah, I thought they extended
Stephen Draper says Armstead may retire.
He's making 28.3. He's due to make 28.3 next year. Like, that's a lot of money, bro.
Yeah, there's no way he's retiring.
No, how old is he? Hold on.
Sean Wilford says Grant saying CMC for a first round
pick. He's only 30.
They're not trading CMC for a first round pick, right?
Yeah, Eric's only 30. He's not retiring. They might trade him, though. He is falling apart at the seams, man. At this stage of the game, you know that he's not finishing a season. We know that. He's not finishing a season. So, that may be it, honestly. Because I really was trying to think about something else to counteract your argument. But Debo's going nowhere. They can sign BA. That's not like that whole BA narrative kind of flew out the window once the cap got released. Like if the BA doesn't get signed, it's because they didn't want it to happen. Like
Goldhouse says
make it happen.
Purdy's gone. Yeah, there you go. Purdy's out of here. Would you do that D Ford deal again with Kansas City? As far as would you give Kansas City your second round pick if you could get L'Jarius Sneed?
Yeah,
you would.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that number one corner, God, you can do so much if you got the great corner.
Shut down the whole field. I mean, if you automatically make Charvarius Ward your number 2 corner, I mean, that's something that most teams don't have. It's over. You know what I'm saying? With our linebacking core, with those corners, that's a problem.
Yeah. This last one from CJ. He says, if we need a mid-round wide receiver, watch Malachi Corley. Very much a Debo-like guy for the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers. Love Malachi Corley. Definitely. Poor man's Debo. Coach, what do you got cooking the rest of your Saturday? You Hannibal go for the run yet? Or what's the weather
we got to get Hannibal out. I got a show cooking up later in the day with Tom. We're going to start talking about this defensive coordinator situation a little bit more in depth. And get ready for the week, man.
Awesome stream, man. Have a great Saturday. Thanks to our sponsors. Thanks to Coach. Thanks to all you guys. Thanks for the supers. About 1,000 people in the room today. Awesome. Coach and I on Saturdays is becoming one of my biggest streams of the week. And it's not because of me. It's because of that guy.
It's us guys.
That guy. Have a great day, everybody. Peace.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful.